First contact. Humans were once thought to be impossible, myths whispered by alien throats with awe and disbelief. Could an uncharted primitive species truly shatter the galactic status quo? Captain Zakor of the Federation starship Nexus landed on Earth expecting another unremarkable planet. Instead, he encountered humans, an advanced civilization that had been secretly observing the galaxy for decades. The human leader greeted Zakor, inviting him to tour their gleaming underground city. As Zakor marveled at human technology and infrastructure that rivaled the Federation's, an icy tendril of fear slithered down his spine. These humans were no primitives. Their power could make them the Federation's greatest threat or greatest ally. The fate of the galaxy itself hung in the balance. The Nexus hung in the void of space, a gleaming beacon of the Federation's might. Captain Zakor strode onto the bridge, his mind still reeling from his encounter with the humans on Earth. He had seen things that defied belief, technology that matched and, in some cases, surpassed the Federation's own. It was a revelation that shook him to his core. Zakor stood before the holographic projections of the Federation Council, their faces etched with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Chairman Vortox, an imposing figure with a crown of horns, leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Captain Zakor, your report on the humans is intriguing," Vortox said, his voice deep and resonant. "But surely you exaggerate their capabilities. No uncharted species could pose a genuine threat to the Federation." Zakor shook his head, his voice urgent. "With all due respect, Chairman, the humans are not to be underestimated. Their technology rivals our own, and their society is far more advanced than we initially believed. We must monitor their activity closely." The council members exchanged glances, their expressions ranging from amusement to disbelief. Vortox waved a dismissive hand. "The Federation has faced many challenges, Captain. We have always emerged victorious. The humans are no different. They will learn their place in the galactic order soon enough." Frustration boiled within Zakor, but he held his tongue. The Council's complacency was a dangerous thing, but he knew arguing further would be futile. He bowed his head, masking his true thoughts. "As you say, Chairman." As the meeting adjourned, Zakor retreated to his quarters, his mind racing. If the Council would not take the human threat seriously, he would have to take matters into his own hands. He accessed the Nexus's intelligence network, his fingers flying over the console as he began gathering every scrap of information on human capabilities. Little did Zakor know that light years away, Commander Mitchell was receiving new orders from Earth. The holographic figure of Admiral Vance, the supreme commander of Earth's military, flickered to life in Mitchell's office. "Commander Mitchell, the time has come to initiate Phase 2. Admiral Vance said, his voice firm and unwavering. "Our operatives are in position. You will coordinate their infiltration of key Federation installations. We need that sensitive information." Mitchell nodded, a grim smile on his face. "Understood, Admiral. The Federation won't know what hit them." As human operatives slipped past Federation security systems like ghosts, Zakor's suspicions grew. Reports of breaches and missing data flooded in, each one a puzzle piece falling into place. He summoned Mitchell to his office, his eyes hard and accusing. "Commander Mitchell, I demand to know what your people are doing," Zakor said, his voice tight with anger. "These infiltrations, the stolen data, what are your true objectives?" Mitchell met Zakor's gaze, his expression inscrutable. "Captain Zakor, you have always been a perceptive one, but I'm afraid I cannot reveal our plans. Just know that the Federation's days of unchallenged dominance are numbered." Zakor slammed his fist on the desk, frustration and fear warring within him. "You are playing a dangerous game, Commander. The Federation will not stand idly by while you threaten the galactic balance of power." Mitchell chuckled, a low and ominous sound. "The game has already begun, Captain. And the humans, we play to win." As Mitchell left, Zakor sank into his chair, his mind reeling. The humans were not just technologically advanced. They were strategically cunning. Their plans were far more intricate than he had ever imagined. The Federation faced a threat unlike any before, and Zakor feared that they were woefully unprepared for the storm that was coming. Rising tensions. The Federation Council chamber was a cacophony of raised voices and heated arguments. Zakor stood before them, his frustration mounting as he tried to convince the Council of the looming human threat. Chairman Vortox, his expression a mask of skepticism, raised a hand to silence the room. "Captain Zakor, your insistence on this matter is becoming tiresome," Vortox said, his voice dripping with condescension. "The humans are a primitive species, hardly capable of challenging the Federation. We will send a diplomatic envoy to Earth to establish formal relations and put this matter to rest." Zakor clenched his jaw, biting back a retort. He knew the Council was making a grave mistake, but he had no choice but to comply. As the meeting adjourned, he watched as the diplomatic envoy boarded their ship, a sense of unease settling in his gut. Days turned into weeks with no word from the envoy. Zakor paced the bridge of the Nexus, his mind racing with possibilities. When the communication finally came, it was not what he had hoped for. The envoy had been ambushed, their ship destroyed, and all contact lost. Zakor burst into the council chamber, his face a mask of determination. "Chairman Vortox, the humans are behind this attack. We must take action before it's too late." Vortox's eyes narrowed, his voice low and threatening. "Captain Zakor, you overstep your bounds. We will handle this matter through diplomatic channels. Stand down or face the consequences." But Zakor had had enough of the Council's inaction. He gathered a small team of trusted officers and set out to investigate the ambush site, defying direct orders. As they picked through the wreckage, the evidence was damning. Human weapons, human technology, and most chilling of all, plans for a large-scale invasion of Federation space. Zakor confronted Commander Mitchell, his voice shaking with anger. "What is the meaning of this, Mitchell? Your people have attacked a Federation envoy." Mitchell's smile was cold and calculating. "Captain Zakor, you have always been a thorn in our side. The Federation's arrogance has blinded them to the truth. Humanity has grown tired of being seen as a primitive species. We intend to take our rightful place as the dominant power in the galaxy." Zakor's hand flew to his weapon, but Mitchell was faster. The human commander's blaster was already trained on Zakor's chest. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Captain. The wheels are already in motion. The Federation will fall, and humanity will rise." Back in the council chamber, the evidence Zakor presented was irrefutable. The Council, faced with the reality of the human threat, had no choice but to declare war on Earth. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The galactic community braced for an unprecedented conflict as two advanced civilizations prepared to clash in a battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy itself. Zakor stood on the bridge of the Nexus, his gaze fixed on the view screen. Earth loomed before him, a deceptively peaceful blue marble in the void of space. He knew that beneath that serene exterior, the humans were mobilizing their forces, preparing for the fight of their lives. The captain squared his shoulders, the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. The war had begun, and the future was uncertain. But one thing was clear: the fate of the Federation and the galaxy itself hung in the balance. The war begins. The war raged on, with the Federation and Earth locked in a brutal struggle for dominance. The once pristine worlds of the galaxy were now scared by the fires of conflict, as the two mighty civilizations clashed in a battle that would determine the fate of the universe. Zakor, his mind sharpened by the harsh realities of war, had risen through the ranks to become one of the Federation's most brilliant strategists. He pored over the reports from the front lines, his brow furrowed in concentration as he tried to anticipate the humans' next move. But with each passing day, it became clear that the Federation had grossly underestimated their enemy. The human forces, led by the cunning General Alexander Novik, fought with a ferocity and ingenuity that caught the Federation off guard. They struck without warning, using unconventional tactics that left the Federation reeling. Novak's troops seemed to melt into the shadows, only to reappear behind enemy lines, wreaking havoc on the Federation's supply chains and communications. Zakor studied the reports of Novak's latest victories, his stomach twisting with a sense of unease. The human general was a master of the art of war, his mind always 3 steps ahead of his opponents. Zakor knew that if the Federation was to have any hope of victory, they would need to outthink Novak at every turn. As Zakor worked late into the night, an urgent message flashed across his screen. His eyes widened as he read the contents, his heart pounding in his chest. Novak was planning a daring raid on the Federation's capital world, with the goal of capturing Chairman Vortox himself. If the humans succeeded, they could force the Federation to surrender, ending the war in one fell swoop. Zakor leaped to his feet, his mind racing as he barked orders to his subordinates. They needed to move fast if they were to have any hope of stopping Novak's plan. As he raced toward the capital world, Zakor couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap. Novak was too smart to risk everything on a single gambit, unless he had something else up his sleeve. As Zakor's ship touched down on the capital world, he was greeted by a scene of chaos. The streets were filled with panicked civilians as the sound of explosions and gunfire echoed in the distance. Zakor pushed his way through the crowds, his hand resting on the butt of his blaster as he made his way toward the government district. As he rounded a corner, Zakor found himself face to face with Novak himself. The human general was flanked by a squad of elite soldiers, their weapons trained on Zakor's chest. Novak's eyes glinted with a fierce intelligence, his lips curled in a smile that was equal parts amusement and menace. "Captain Zakor," Novak said, his voice smooth and confident. "I was hoping you would join us. It seems that the Federation's greatest strategist has finally met his match." Zakor's hand tightened on his blaster, his mind racing as he tried to find a way out of the situation. He knew that he was outgunned and outmatched, but he couldn't let Novak win. The fate of the Federation and the galaxy itself hung in the balance. "You're making a mistake, General," Zakor said, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "The Federation will never surrender, no matter what you do." Novak chuckled, his eyes glinting with a hint of madness. "You still don't get it, do you, Zakor? The Federation's time is over. Humanity has evolved beyond your narrow-minded view of the universe. We will not be held back any longer." As Novak spoke, Zakor's mind raced with possibilities. He had always believed in the Federation's superiority, in their divine right to rule the galaxy. But now, faced with the raw power and determination of the human threat, he began to question everything he had ever known. Were the humans truly the savages that the Federation had always believed them to be, or were they something more, a force of nature that could not be contained by the old ways of thinking? As the two leaders stared each other down, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, Zakor knew that he would need all of his cunning and skill to outmaneuver the brilliant General Novak and secure victory for the Federation. The turning point. The Nexus hung in the void, a once proud symbol of Federation, might now battered and scarred by the relentless onslaught of human aggression. On the bridge, Zakor stood hunched over the comm station, his eyes bloodshot and his uniform disheveled. He had been awake for days, desperately trying to negotiate a truce with the humans, but to no avail. General Novak's face sneered at him from the view screen, his eyes glinting with a feverish intensity. "You have fought well, Captain Zakor, but the time for games is over. The Federation will surrender unconditionally or face total annihilation." Zakor clenched his fists, his voice shaking with barely suppressed rage. "You are making a grave mistake, General. The Federation will never bow to your tyranny." Novak laughed, a harsh and grating sound that sent shivers down Zakor's spine. "You still don't understand, do you? The Federation's time is over. Humanity will rise as the dominant power in the galaxy, and I will be the one to lead us to glory." The screen went blank, leaving Zakor alone with his thoughts. He had always known that Novak was ambitious, but he had never imagined that the general's thirst for power would drive him to such extremes. If Novak succeeded in his plans, not only the Federation but all of Earth would suffer under his iron-fisted rule. A chime at the door interrupted Zakor's brooding. He turned to see Commander Mitchell standing in the doorway, his face drawn and haggard. "Captain Zakor, we need to talk," Mitchell said, his voice urgent. Zakor's eyes narrowed. "What do you want, Mitchell?" "Come to gloat over your victory." Mitchell shook his head, his voice earnest. "No, Captain. I've come to warn you. Novak's ambitions threaten us all, human and Federation alike. We must stop him before it's too late." Zakor studied Mitchell's face, searching for any sign of deceit. He had never trusted the human commander, but the desperation in Mitchell's eyes seemed genuine. "What do you propose?" Zakor asked cautiously. Mitchell stepped forward, his voice low and intense. "We must rescue Chairman Vortox and expose Novak's true intentions to the human government. If we can prove that he is acting against the best interests of Earth, we may be able to turn the tide of this war." Zakor nodded slowly, his mind racing with possibilities. It was a risky plan, but it was the only chance they had. "Very well, Mitchell. We will work together for now. But if you betray me, I will not hesitate to end you." Mitchell met Zakor's gaze, his eyes hard and unwavering. "Understood, Captain. We have no time to lose." As the two commanders began to plan their daring operation, the Nexus hummed with a renewed sense of purpose. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and Zakor knew that he would stop at nothing to prevent it from falling into the hands of a madman. The rescue mission, the infiltration of the human stronghold, was a blur of smoke and blood. Zakor and Mitchell fought side by side, their weapons blazing as they cut a path through the enemy lines. The air was thick with the stench of death and the screams of the dying, but they pressed on, driven by a grim determination to see their mission through. At last, they reached the cell where Chairman Vortox was being held. The once proud leader of the Federation was a broken shell of his former self, his body battered, and his spirit crushed by the cruelty of his captors. Zakor's heart ached at the sight of him, but there was no time for sentiment. "Chairman Vortox, we must go now," Zakor urged, his voice hoarse from the smoke and the shouting. Vortox looked up at him with haunted eyes, his voice a mere whisper. "Captain Zakor, I never thought I would see you again. I thought all was lost." Mitchell helped the chairman to his feet, his voice urgent. "We must hurry, sir. Novak's forces will be upon us at any moment." As they made their escape, the alarms began to blare, and the sound of boots pounding on metal filled the air. Zakor and Mitchell exchanged a grim look, knowing that the final battle was upon them. They emerged into the main hangar, where Novak stood waiting for them, flanked by his elite guard. The general's face was twisted with rage, his eyes blazing with a madness that sent chills down Zakor's spine. "You fools!" Novak roared, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. "You think you can stop me? I am the future of humanity, and I will crush anyone who stands in my way." Zakor stepped forward, his voice calm and steady. "It's over, Novak. We have the chairman, and we will expose your treachery to the world. Surrender now, and you may yet be shown mercy." Novak laughed, a harsh and grating sound that set Zakor's teeth on edge. "Mercy? I have no need for mercy. I have the power of the human race behind me, and I will use it to create a new order in the galaxy." As Novak's guard advanced, weapons drawn, Zakor and Mitchell prepared for the fight of their lives. The fate of the Federation, of Earth, and of all sentient life in the galaxy rested on their shoulders, and they would not fail. The battle was joined, a whirlwind of fire and fury that lit up the hangar like a supernova. Zakor and Mitchell fought with a skill and ferocity that belied their exhaustion, their weapons flashing in the dim light as they cut down their enemies one by one. But Novak was a formidable opponent, his own weapon a blur of motion as he advanced on the two commanders. Zakor could see the madness in his eyes, the hunger for power that had driven him to betray his own people and plunge the galaxy into war. "You cannot win, Novak," Zakor panted, his body aching with a dozen wounds. "The Federation and Earth will never bow to your tyranny." Novak sneered, his face a mask of hatred. "The Federation is weak, and Earth is mine to command. I will crush you like the insects you are, and I will rule the galaxy as its rightful master." But even as Novak spoke, Zakor could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. The general had underestimated the strength and determination of his enemies, and now he was beginning to realize the folly of his ambition. With a final desperate surge of energy, Zakor and Mitchell launched themselves at Novak, their weapons flashing in a blur of motion. The general fought back with all